the way that they operate, it's a lot of handwork. Even a lot of excavation is done by hand or with tractors. They're doing masonry work and they need clean sand for that. So they're getting sand delivered and then they literally have like a homemade screen that they're running the sand through to sort out and get finer grains of sand that they need for finish coats. It's a very primitive style of building and they are pretty talented with what they do and with what they have to be doing what they do. What's up, everyone? I'm just getting back from vacation. I'm pretty tired and I have a lot going on. Excuse me. We we took last week after Easter and we went down. My dad actually built a house in Belize. You guys, if you've been following for a while, probably heard this last year. We did the same thing. Last year we went around, what holiday was it? Oh, Valentine's Day. I think we actually left on Valentine's Day, and we spent a week down there. And we did the same thing this year. We were not going to go away for spring break, and then Rachel and I were like, "Hey, we should head down to Belize." So we asked my dad. He approved it. My dad and his wife, my stepmom, actually built the house. It's in Placencia, Belize. So we took off on Monday, kind of the middle of the night, head down there, and we stayed until Monday. Our flight got delayed Monday from Belize City, and we missed our connecting flight in Miami. So we had to spend the night in Miami with the girls, and then we flew home early on Tuesday morning. So a little complicated end of the trip. It's a little bit of lack of sleep and the time change. They are 2 hours behind. So it's been rough reentry. We got back again late yesterday, later than anticipated yesterday. Yesterday was Tuesday instead of on Monday. So we really had to get right back to it. Girls went to school. We got in around 11. We had the girls back in school by noon. I was right back to work. Rachel was way back to work. And then we had a scrimmage last night that we didn't get home till 9. So it's been chaotic getting back to it, which is tough. The tough part of vacation is always leaving, getting ready to leave, and then reentry. And then I have the normal stuff going on. Today is another office day, and then tomorrow and Friday, getting back to being on the job. So it's been hectic. It's been chaotic. There's a lot going on. I have a list of a lot of things that I have to get done and not enough time to do them. So I'm just going to keep plugging along. This probably won't come out until a little bit later, but hopefully all of you, if you had family, if you take time off, enjoyed Easter holiday, spring break. I know not everyone celebrates Easter, but if you have kids, most people have a spring break. So hopefully you enjoyed your spring break. We did. Again, reentry's tough. Getting away is tough. It's a lot of work. The kids adjusting, adults adjusting, myself adjusting. It's difficult, but we had a good time. It was our second time heading down there, and it was a little bit more relaxing. Just at this point, you know what to expect. You know what the country's like. Traveling, you've been there before. The drives to where you are going aren't quite as long because you already understand. You're not anticipating everything that's going to happen. You know how long it's going to take. I feel like it's when you were a kid and you would drive somewhere for the first time and getting there took forever, and then getting home took a lot less time, even though it was the same amount of time. Same thing, being somewhere twice. My dad and his wife didn't come down until midweek, so we had a few days by ourselves. We rented a rental car this time. So it's tough to get direct flights from where we are. So we fly. Last year we flew into Atlanta. This year we flew into Miami, and then we have a layover into Belize City. From there, you can either, to get to where my dad's place is in Placencia, you can either take a little puddle jumper plane, which is like 30 minutes in the air, to get to Placencia, and then it's a 10-15 minute car ride from there to his place. Or you can drive, and it's probably 2.5 hours. So we decided to drive. So we had a rental car. My dad does have a car at his house, but we weren't able to get from the airport to his house anyway. So we rented a car and we stopped pretty maybe a half hour from the airport is the Belize Zoo. So we took the girls to the zoo, a very small, low key zoo. It was cool. It was fun. You see a bunch of local animals. A bunch of them are rescues. One thing about Belize, they are well, I guess I can get into that. They're very respectful of the land and the sea. There's not a ton of infrastructure built up. It's a pretty um, unpopulated country. There's not a lot of people who live there, and um, there's just not a ton of infrastructure and things put in place um, to develop the country. But they still are fairly respectful of natural resources. They understand that the sea provides them with um, a lot of work and jobs and resources. So they're very respectful of protecting their natural resources. Um, there's a little bit of pollution just because of the lack of infrastructure and the way that it's set up. It's not as easy to recycle and get rid of trash, and everything's septic, and even getting water sometimes can be tough. So there's a bit of pollution just because it's an undeveloped country, but not air pollution. Just sometimes trash or like some stuff will float up in the water, just because of the way it's set up, but not anything extreme. Um, it's just an undeveloped country. So, um, that being said, they are very respectful of their natural resources and preserving what came before them, which is neat to see. Because it's I don't feel that it's necessarily like that in the United States. We consume way too much. I don't feel that we have too much respect for what's around us and natural resources and what's provided to us. So it's cool to see that there. As far as the population goes, I want to pull up my blog post here. Um, just for point of reference. So Belize has a little over 400,000 people, which is not a lot at all. I didn't look up how many square miles it is, but Mexico, which is like northwest of Belize, has 17.5 million people. Guatemala, which I believe is due west of Belize, has 17.5 million people. And then southwest would be El Salvador, which is like from a square mileage perspective, roughly the same size as Belize, has 6.5 million people. So it really, from a dense population density perspective, Belize does not have a lot of people. Um, there's a lot of very primitive living there, very primitive. Um, it's not a very fancy place. It's definitely a third world country. The background and the heritage of the country, it's made up of a few different type of people, but primarily, um, there is Spanish background. There's a large Mayan population there. There's also a large African population. They were brought over as slaves and then migrated um, to Belize. So the primary cultures and population there would be Mayan, a couple of different African cultures, and then Spanish, and then the mixture of them, Spanish and Mayan, Spanish and African, which would be like, I guess, the homogenization of Belize, where cultures have been together long enough and start intermingling and creating their population. But it's just there's not enough people right now, and the density isn't enough that it's still certain cultures live in certain areas. There's a little bit of mixing, but it's not like the United States. There's also, interestingly enough, a decent Asian and also Mennonite population, which is crazy to me. Uh, I didn't look up how or why the Mennonites ended up there, but you'll be walking down the street and then you'll see a Mennonite. So if you're unfamiliar with Mennonites, I'm not going to go any deeper than you could. And this is like probably a super ignorant statement, but they have a similar look to Amish people. So you could be walking down the street with a bunch of people who look like they're from Belize, whether it's African people, Mayan people, Spanish people, and then a Mennonite walking down the street in like pants, long sleeve button shirt, hat, um, suspenders, and it's like, wow, it it seems out of place, and it's very interesting to see that. But apparently, there's a fairly large Mennonite population there. Where we spent, there were some. It wasn't extremely prevalent, but apparently there's some Mennonite communities with more Mennonites in them. But it's a really neat country. It's impressive how much space there is, how little air pollution there is, how they get by with what they have, which realistically, in a lot of areas of the country, isn't a lot. Even in Placencia, which now is considered built up, it's relatively primitive. There's just not a ton of infrastructure and a ton of money there, but that being said, it's a safe country. I've been to other countries where it's not quite as safe to travel around. Um, you can travel to most areas of Belize, especially where we are, and it's a safe country. You can bring your family. You can eat in local restaurants. They treat you kindly. They treat you with respect. Um, it's really neat to see how they live and how they've established themselves and what they really take pride in. Um, it's neat to see the way that they build. Right, this is a building podcast, but it's really neat to see how they build and how long it takes to build. And they do a ton with concrete and masonry. My dad's house is concrete and block, and they're the only place that there's drywall in there is they lowered one of the ceilings to be able to run wires across the certain areas. But everything else is conduit in block, conduit in concrete, and they either have metal frame roof or wood framed roofs. It's crazy how much masonry they do, and it's not fast. Um, the way that they operate, it's a lot of handwork. Even a lot of excavation is done by hand or with tractors. They're doing masonry work and they need clean sand for that. So they're getting sand delivered and then they literally have like a homemade screen that they're running the sand through to sort out and get finer grains of sand that they need for finish coats. Um, so there, it's a very primitive style of building, but they get it done, and a lot of it's beautiful, and they are pretty talented with what they do and with what they have to be doing what they do. That being said, it is not fast. It's not fast at all. I sit there and I watch them work, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I just can't imagine showing up all day and that's what you're getting done. And then you're calling it a day. But I guess that I'm looking at it from the perspective of we are on tight schedules, budgets, timelines. The expectation is get it done yesterday. And that's not the expectation here. And they're not getting paid to do that there. So we spent some time doing some touristy stuff. My dad likes to take the girls. They did some zip lining and some rock climbing and some cave exploration, which was like 2 hours away. A really pretty drive out into the jungle. We went out to a couple of nice dinners. There's some hotels and some nice restaurants in Placencia and around that area. And then we also did a fair amount of eating at local restaurants, whether it be road tripping and stopping on our way back to the airport when our flight got delayed. And then downtown in Placencia, there's still a fair amount of people who just make a living cooking for other people, cooking for local people. So we we took the girls downtown the one day, and they were very hot. It's super hot down there, and we're just not used to it coming from winter or early spring here. And we stopped. There was a little stand, basically a shack. It's like a shed, and then they were cooking some tacos in that shed, which isn't necessarily typical cuisine of Belize. It's a lot of fish, a lot of seafood, being that it's on the sea, and then a lot of Creole cooking. So they have a lot of stewed chicken, rice and beans, but like rice and beans is different than beans and rice. So like Spanish would be rice and then beans separate, and they cook beans and rice together. That's what they call rice and beans. Plantains, fresh fruit. But we stopped at a taco stand, which is would be a more Spanish style of cuisine. And the girls and I got 12 tacos and two fresh watermelon juices and two fresh coconut juices, and it was $17.50. So pretty inexpensive to feed four of us. And that's how the local people eat, and that's the cost of living down there. You can obviously go to hotels or nicer areas, and it's going to be more standard in line with American pricing or Canadian or UK and stuff like that. But a lot of the local living, it's fairly inexpensive. You can survive down there on a lot less than you can here. It's a really interesting place. It's starting to get some money, and I guess it has over the past 8 to 10 years. But there's starting to be some investors getting into it. There's some developments going up. There's some nicer houses going up. People are buying some land and starting to do some more residential clusters and developments. There's just so much open land there, and there's so much waterfront that's available, that people are starting to buy that up and subdivide and sell off those lots. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I know Belize wants to increase their population. Um, Obviously, more people there, more opportunity for work, more money. I think it's still so new that the people are grateful for it. It's tough. I look at it and I'm like, I think that, if you were local and this is your home, that these people coming in with more money, and like my dad building a house there, it's not a house. It's not crazy, but it's not like a local's house. You can tell it's not somebody who would live there. It's somebody who has more money than if you were born in Belize, um, generally speaking. And I think that if I lived there or that was my home, that would frustrate me. But they're appreciative of it still. They're kind. They don't treat you poorly. They don't have an attitude towards you. And I'm not sure if that will happen. Maybe as things progress and there's more development, um, maybe it will become more frustrating. Maybe right now there's a financial impact of that is helping these people, so they're still relatively grateful, or just it's so new to them, um, that it's not a negative to them right now. But that was always interesting to me driving through. I mean, you can tell that we're not from Belize, and you don't really get treated differently. You can go to a local restaurant with all local people sitting there eating their lunch or picking food up to go, and they're super kind, they're super nice, they treat you the same, they're respectful. And I don't think that that's always the case everywhere that you go to travel. Shit, I can go to another city and people give me a hard time because they can tell that you're not local, and then you're in this country where you're not one of them. And for whatever reason, they're still kind to you, which is really refreshing and really nice. And they're really proud of their heritage and their land, and they want you to experience that. And they're happy that you get to experience that. They do not have much, but they're okay with that, and they're happy with that. And that's neat to see. It's a mindset and a culture that's so far from what we experience and what we were brought up on here in the United States, at least in my area, um, as far as opportunities go, as far as infrastructure, schooling, housing. um, and I understand that there's low income areas and people who really struggle in this country, but I think that that's not the standard. Um, Unfortunately, that that's the standard, for a lot of people in Belize, and that's just what they're used to, and that's where they stand. But they're happy. Um, everyone for the most part is like that. They work hard. They don't get paid a lot, and they don't have a lot, but they don't really long for that much. So it's interesting to see, and it's so far from what we experience and how we live our lives here in the States. I was having a conversation with somebody about, like the cost of living here and what they survive on down there, a day, a month, a year. And he was like, now I see why people come here and enjoy it so much. And then I see them so upset when they go to leave because a lot of those worries go out the window. And he didn't, I guess he was 27. He was a younger guy that I was speaking to for a couple hours while we were at the beach. And he was local, and just some insight as to how they live and how we live and how much different it is. And I can tell you one thing is that they are not envious of the lifestyle that we have. It's not ingrained in them. It's not something that they want. They would not trade what they have for what we have, which is pretty neat to see, and makes you think a lot. So vacation was good. Reentry is always hard. Again, we got right back to it. Um, that's the most difficult part. I mean, getting away is always hard. Being able to set everything up so that you can take time off and go on vacation, but then reentry is especially hard, especially with kids and time zones being off, and then getting back to school. They're excited to get back, and then after a day or two, they're like, "Oh, this is the same crap." And I feel like that's the same way I am, but I might be able to handle a little better than my 7 and 10-year-old. But I'm really grateful for the opportunity that I have to be able to go away and shut my phone off or not have internet and spend some time with my family. It's really hard at home to do that. And that was really nice to just know my phone is not going to work outside of my dad's house. I'm not going to put on an international plan. What's at home can wait. So I didn't need my phone on me. I just spent time with the kids. um, I was really present, really engaged. And I recall last year that it was the same thing. And it's so much harder to do that at home. Literally, as soon as we walked in the door, before the kids even got to school late, at noon, my wife took them, and I'm at my computer catching up on work, catching up on emails, writing a list of shit that I need to do to get back into it. It's just really hard to do at home. It it's difficult for everyone. So I've been struggling a little bit through that. I think I'm all right. But it's been tough. Reentry is definitely tough. But on the horizon, um, I've had I had another consulting call today with a regular of mine. Um, these calls always get me thinking about stuff that I want to discuss, thing that things that are on my mind. I also I have a few podcast and blog post topics coming up that I want to dive into. I would love if you guys have suggestions, recommendations, things that you want to hear about. Definitely reach out to me. Let me know. Shoot me an email, tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. Nick and I are currently in the process of adding a new 1 to 2 sections to the website that I think you all will really enjoy and really like. And the goal is to be able to offer you access, a little easier access to what we do and things that have worked for us. Um, so I'm going to get going on that here to start creating maybe some courses, some articles, stuff that will be really helpful for you, that maybe you don't want to hop on a consulting call for an hour. Maybe you just need help with something specific. You see something specific and you're like, yeah, you know what, that would really change my business. We want to be able to create an access to that for stuff that works for me. Um, as always, this is going to be from my perspective. Like, my perspective is what I understand, what I do, and what works for me. That's not going to be building a huge company. That's not going to be building, multiple houses a year. Just right now, that's not my experience. That's not what I want for myself. And I'm not trying to advocate for that. I'm only going to share my experience and what works for me. And I know that I'm a small scale contractor. I know that I'm an owner operator. Um, but I'm okay with that. For years it was something that I didn't really want to hang my head on or hang my belt on, that like, this is what I do, right? Everyone, well, how are you going to grow? How are you going to scale? And I think that we get a lot of that pressure. And I felt that I had to for years. And I've realized that my position is to be able to help guys and girls who don't want that, right? Who just, they enjoy doing this. They enjoy working with their hands. Maybe they don't want to overly complicate business, but they want to be able to make a living. And I see that as a huge struggle for a lot of guys and girls that want to start their own business or want to make a little bit more money. And they're really in this for the sake of the trade and the craft, and they don't know how to transition that. So that's going to be my perspective. I was I presented at JLC recently. I presented at NAHB. All the feedback was fairly good. But one thing that stood out to me is I screenshotted it. I sent it to Nick. um, but in one of the presentations, right, I'm not going to speak to using technology for your business and software systems and everything else. But somebody's comment, and this doesn't really upset me, but I found it interesting, and I don't think that I've communicated properly, like, what my stance is on all of this. But it says Tyler is no expert. He is not a good example of a remodeling company that has growth potential. He does not use software to run an efficient business. He is a one man. Can't believe I paid for this. Um, so that was, and obviously that's not everyone. um, but that was somebody's opinion of my presentation throughout the day, which was lined up with a bunch of other presentations. And I realized that, like, yeah, I am a one man, 1 to 2 man. I'm not a company that's set up for growth and for scale. And the fact that this person thought that I was, or that's what they were going to get out of this, it's not right or wrong. They're absolutely right, but I didn't properly communicate that from the get-go. And I want to ensure that people understand that if you are a one man, a 2 man show, if you don't have goals, if you don't want to scale, that, like, I'm probably a good resource for you. And that's always been my stance and my take. I just probably didn't have the confidence to come out and say that, but, like, that's where I want to be. That's what makes me happy. I don't want to grow this massive business. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you guys and girls are out there and that's your take and that's what you want, and maybe that's not what you want all the time. Maybe you get a little bit older and you get fed up with it. Maybe I get a little older and I get fed up with it, and there's something that I want to change. Um, there's an ability, and you have an ability to do that. But for right now, I want to be the resource that can help you as a 1 to 3 man show be profitable while remaining small and not feel like you have to work 80 to 100 hours in order to break even or keep people busy or provide an income and a lifestyle for your family. So, yeah, I don't use a ton of construction technology and software. My business model is not a model for scaling a construction company or massive growth. Um, I'm completely confident and comfortable in my own skin saying that that's not right or wrong, that those are just facts. And I think that the other fact is that most of the people in our industry are similar to myself, and that they struggle figuring out how to do this on such a small scale, and they turn to looking to go to a larger scale because they think that's going to be the answer to their problems. And a lot of times it's not. It's foundational issues and issues within our industry that somewhat carry over onto the way that we operate. And I think that we bear a lot of the weight from the industry and residential and our customers' programs and objectives, and a lot of that ends up falling on our shoulders, whether you're big or small. So that's my stance. That's how I feel about that, and I am 100% comfortable saying that. Yeah, like you're right. That is me. Um, that does not make me an expert. Make me not an expert. Um, I can confidently say that like I understand how to make money being small, and not have to kill myself. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, and I struggle with that for a really long time, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. So if I can help you with that, let me know. Shoot me an email, tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. And in the meantime, Nick and I will continue to put this together on the back end to create some sort of a hub that hopefully helps you guys and girls even more, and it's even easier and even simpler. um, and I will explain this in more detail as we progress, but just know that on the back end we're working on some things that I believe will help all of you out. There's going to be something for everyone there. So that's it for me this week. I'm going to wrap up. I'm excited to get working on that. I'm excited to be back, even though reentry is a huge pain in my ass and I'm a little bit stressed right now. Um, Nothing too overwhelming. I'm managing it as well as I can. But I hope that all of you enjoyed your vacation time off. If you didn't have time off, try and find a way to take some time off. Slow down to speed up. But as always, I appreciate everyone. I appreciate all of the engagement, all of the consulting calls, all of the feedback. I got back into town and I was going through all of this stuff, and I just in over my head in paperwork and playing catch up, and I got a voice text from somebody on Instagram that was just like, "Hey," nobody I know, and it was just like, "Hey, just wanted to reach out and let you know that I really appreciate everything that you're doing, with the podcast, with the midweeks, with the blog post, just sharing your perspective, opening up your calendar to be able to speak to people." Um, they'd struggled with it, and they appreciate that I'm putting all of this out there for people to hopefully learn from, and not bang their head against the wall, and that they just appreciate all that I'm doing. And again, this is not somebody who I know, not somebody who I spoke with, but with all of this weight on my shoulders, and seeing one of these reviews come through, and just getting back into the swing of things and vacation being over, I was fairly anxious, and I just was going through DMs and I saw this and I was like, you know what? This is perfect timing for this. This is what I needed to hear. This is reassuring. Um, so if you have insight, feedback, constructive criticism, always don't hesitate to reach out. Email is probably better than DMs. I don't always get to them, but thank you to this listener follower who shot me that response. The timing was perfect. I couldn't have asked for it more, and it is very much appreciated. And you are welcome. All right, guys and girls, I'll catch you next week. Thanks for everything.